Hey, welcome back, guys. My name is Mac, and this is Marshfoot Outdoors, and I have got a really sweet knife review for you guys today. Before we get to that, though, I just want to say Happy Memorial Day to everyone. I want to say thank you to all of our veterans, and if you have some time this weekend, maybe just take a little moment of silence to say thank you to our servicemen and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice for this country. Also, you can now get 10% off Odin Wolf knives by using my affiliate link, which I will put down below, or you can use the checkout code MARSH10 at checkout on Odin Wolf's website to also get 10% off Odin Wolf knives and products. So, thank you for being here. Thank you to my returning subscribers, new subscribers. I appreciate your guys' support very much. We're starting to grow the channel, which is awesome. And if it's your first time here stopping by the channel, then I would really, really love it if you decided to subscribe. If not, maybe you can at least hit the thumbs up on your way out. And I also love when you guys comment. I've learned so much from you guys doing these knife review videos, and it's really cool getting to interact with people that watch the channel. So, without further ado, we're going to get ready to jump right into the review of the BPS Adventurer, and we're going to talk about this as I like to do with my initial reviews. Keep in mind a couple things. These are initial review videos. Sometimes the knives have a little bit of use before I do the review. Sometimes they have no use at all. But one thing that they all have in common is that they're all kind of budget, affordable knives. Doesn't mean that they're cheap in quality. It just means that they are cheap in price. And if you remember when I did my Odin Wolf review, I talked about that nice box. And not so much here with the BPS Adventurer knife with my initial impression, initial review. So as I talked to the Odin Wolf knife, I was like, hey, if you want to give that to someone as a gift, you've got that nice sleeved box. And not so much here with the BPS knife, but what they lack in presentation on the box, they more than make up for the product inside. So mine came all like ripped and tattered like this from Amazon. So nothing like really awesome to speak of inside of the box. It had this cover on the knife with it had this cover on the knife blade with a QR code, which I have no idea if you scan it where it takes you. BPS knives, let the adventure begin. Same deal. They give you some other little placard there with the same inscription or the same quote and another QR code. And then this like tissue paper looks like came from the BPS knives cafeteria. So allegedly, these BPS knives have quite the cult following, and after having this knife in my hand and reviewing it and checking it out over the last week or so, I can see why. Now, this adventurer was apparently very hard to get for a while, and something else that I did not know about this knife, because I bought it off of Amazon. What I like to do is I like to go onto Amazon, I like to go into the internet, and I like to find highly reviewed 4-5 star knives that are not a lot of money. I like to buy them and I like to review them here on the channel for you guys so that you can have the opportunity to have something that's of decent quality as a companion in the field that is not going to break the bank. I love doing that here on the channel with gear, not just knives. So anyway, these knives are made in Ukraine. I didn't know that when I bought it on Amazon. It doesn't really jump out at you that they're made in Ukraine. It's nothing political or anything like that. The knife's made in Ukraine. That's it. There's all there is to it. No more, no less. I was pleasantly surprised by that because I fully expected this to be another Chinese bushcrafter. And then when I opened up the box or the package and I saw this giant made in Ukraine on the side of the box, I was like, hey, that's cool. Affordable bushcrafter that's made somewhere other than China. So I did like that. So as you can see, the very first thing, the second that I picked this thing up and I put it in the sheath is quality. For guys, keep in mind, I paid like $37.89 USD, US fiat currency for this knife. Okay. I think it's up to like $39 now in just a week on Amazon. It retails for around $50. So, you know, 40 bucks. Look at this leather, full grain leather sheath that you're getting. Look at the thickness on that, the stitching. Um, you know, it looks like that it's got brass rivets, or at least, faux brass. I'm not sure, but it looks like brass. Cool dangle sheath. Personally, I really like dangle sheaths. Because of the freedom of movement with your body when you wear this on your side. If you're sitting in your vehicle, you can kind of flip it this way, flop it that way, bend it here, there, however you kind of comfortably want it to ride when you're in a vehicle or whatever you're doing. It allows the knife to kind of freely move with your body and kind of hang a little bit below your hip bone so it's not digging into you. So that's one thing that's nice about a dangle sheath. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could run your belt through here, through this part of the lanyard. Um, what I don't like about a dangle sheath is it's not the greatest for one hand drawing. Absolutely, you can still draw this knife one handed if you have it in the dangle sheath, but it's just not as quick or fast or secure for one handed drawing if you were going to run this through the belt, through this belt loop, or if you had a hole here at the bottom and you had like a lanyard tie around your thigh, which you could always add if you wanted to. One thing to keep in mind with this knife is 1066 steel, and we're going to talk about that once we take the knife out of the sheath. But there's no drain hole in the bottom of this sheath. So keep that in mind that if you get water down on this with that 1066 carbon steel, you're going to create a rust trap in there. And you're going to create a rust trap in there if you get moisture down inside this sheath anyway. So something to think about with that as far as this sheath goes. Still, awesome, really nice, beautiful, well-made sheath. I mean, I could see paying 40 bucks for the sheath alone. Okay. Here you'll see that it's got an included ferro rod. It's also a walnut handle. I don't know if I mentioned the handle on the knife yet, but we'll talk about that. Now, when I first got this, the ferro rod was not in the ferro rod holder. And you can see it took a little bit of effort to get that out, which is good. We don't want our ferro rod falling out if that's going to be one of our means of starting a fire out in camp or something like that. But the ferro rod holder sleeve was so tight when I first got this knife, I could not get it down through the top because you can see how it kind of like inserts on an angle there. And it required so much force and leverage to get it through there that I actually had to put it in through the bottom first and let it set in there and stretch it out a little bit first before I was able to easily get it to go into the ferro rod sleeve there on the side. But that's a good thing. I want my ferro rod sleeve to have good retention. Also, you can see on the ferro rod that you've got a lanyard hole if you want to run a piece of 550 or something like that through there. So if your ferro rod does get pulled out of the sleeve, you're not going to fully lose the ferro rod. All right, so I think we've adequately covered the sheath, just a really beautiful high quality sheath. You can see I've got a little bit of olive oil on there because I like to coat my carbon steel blades in olive oil. You can see that you've got BPS knives embossed there on the sheath. Very tasteful, not gaudy, not all like super tactical or anything. Just a very simple, nice, budget, beautiful piece of work here. And I love it. Love that sheath. All right, so let's go ahead and set that sheath aside. We'll get this back out when we do our ferro rod test. All right, so the knife. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the knife. First thing that you notice, very first thing that I noticed when I picked up this knife was I just love the contrast of the walnut handle, which they say has been treated with Danish oil. But I just love that contrast of that walnut with that carbon steel blade. And I'm going to talk about that carbon steel blade a little bit more, so just hang in. Okay, I love the lines, the simple lines of this knife. I mean, is that not, to me, that's just, it's really beautiful in a simple way, right? Sometimes simple is beautiful. And in this is the case with this knife for me. It's the simplicity of this knife that makes it so attractive to me. I love the scales and the lines, the ergonomics of the handle. It reminds me a lot of like a kitchen knife, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It kind of looks like a kitchen knife. But back in the day, the long trappers and the French, the French long trappers and the mountain men, they basically carried butcher kitchen knives. Your Green River knife. So I like that. Even though you don't have any major finger choil or anything that stands out on the handle and the scales of this knife, it's still very ergonomic when you get just it seems like that they put a lot of attention into their research and development when they made the palm swell and the contour lines on the grip and the scales of this knife. And you can see that it is full tang, that the tang extends all the way through the end of the scales, the handle of the knife. But even though it looks very simple in its lines, it just feels so natural in my hand. I really love that. There are zero hot spots on the grips on the scales of this knife. Zero hot spots. And that's great if you're going to be doing a lot of work with this knife. You can see that it's got a lanyard hole, which is really nice. You want to add your 550 cord. And you could probably make your own scales for this knife so easily because of the fact that they didn't put a lot of intricate choils or anything like that into the tang of this blade. That if you wanted to replace these scales yourself or take these scales off and maybe burn them or stain them or something like that or paint them, you could do that easily. But I could see myself easily probably making different scales for this if I really felt so industrious enough to do that. All right, so moving on from the handle of the knife, we see here that we've got no jimping. Totally okay with that. If you're familiar with the channel, you know how I feel about jimping. You can see that laser etched into the blade here. We've got BPS knives, says 1066 carbon steel and made in the Ukraine. You can see that we've got a true full Scandi grind on this knife. I like that. I like flat grinds, hollow grinds, but I do really like Scandi grinds as well. They're great bush tools. They are robust and they are tough. And the Scandi grind goes all the way to the tip. So we got a full true Scandi grind here. Drop point blade. I really like that. I think drop points are just kind of the best all around do it all blade profiles. So the combination of the drop point with the Scandi grind, what you've got here is you've got yourself a really good, just kind of do it all blade profile knife. 10 inches overall. Again, it's that 8 to 10 inch length for a knife is, to me, it's perfect. That 10 inches is great. Okay. Um, Blade length is 5 and a third inches, and the handle is 4 and 2/3. We've got really good balance, right? I mean, it's almost a 50-50 balance there. We've got a really nice, aggressive 90-degree spine for striking your ferro rod. And now, where they lost me a little bit was on this choil, this little notch back here at the heel of the blade. Now, I don't know if it's coincidence that it's the exact same size and profile as the ferro rod, and if they intend for you to strike your ferro rod on that, which I've done with the ferro rod that it comes with. I mean, it's the exact size of the ferro rod. I don't know if that is what that was intended for. They don't say, they don't describe. I don't think so, and it's not very efficient for striking your ferro rod, even though you can strike it in there. Or if that's some kind of somebody had mentioned that these are sharpening choils, which I'm not real familiar with what that is, and I didn't really investigate into it too much, but I'm not sure. So I wish that they didn't do that because that's going to grab your cordage when you are cutting cordage and things like that, especially if it's like very quick and hastily in an emergency, you're going to get hung up in that. However, I'm not, that's just a very small critique of an otherwise really nice, affordable bushcrafter here, hunting, camping knife. So 1066 carbon steel, there seems to be some conjecture. Some people say that it's a little bit inferior to 1095. Some people say that it's a little bit better than 1095 because it's not as brittle, a little bit easier to sharpen. Some people say that the 1066 is more weather resistant, but at the end of the day, it's still carbon steel, and it is going to take some care and maintenance on your part to make sure that this blade does not rust, as it's not coated, it's not stainless steel or anything like that. So you're going to need to keep that in mind, that if you're someone who is lazy with their gear and you just kind of want to set it and forget it type of knife, anything in the high carbon steel family is not going to be for you. You have to take care of this blade. But I can tell you, I live in the mid-Atlantic of the United States, right on the saltwater marshes. The ocean gets extremely hot and humid here, and I'm always out around the marsh, the saltwater, and I use D2 tool steel knives. I use carbon steel knives, and I don't balk at it one bit. If it's a knife that I like, I don't care what the steel is, I use it. So 60 to 66% carbon steel is what this is, which is why it's called 1066 carbon steel. Whereas with your 1095, that's 95% carbon steel. So that's how they kind of get those designations. Um, One thing I love about this knife, and something I love when knife companies do this, is it is nice and sharp right out of the box. And when we do our sharpness test here in a little bit, you will see that. But this is a knife right out of the box. It came with a heavy coating of oil. I don't know what kind of coating of oil it was, but I cleaned it off because I usually use my knives, my camp knives and such, for cutting food and stuff as well. So I'll end up using olive oil to coat my knives. But anyway, this thing's ready to rock and roll right out of the box. You don't need to sharpen it. You could probably get it a sharper. Somebody that's very good at sharpening knives, I'm sure, could get an even more keen edge. But it's nice to know that you don't necessarily have to with this knife as soon as you get it out of the box. It is ready to go from the box onto your belt into the field, just the way that it is. Now, guys, remember, these are initial review videos a lot. They do not always mean that I've tested the knife before I do the review. Oftentimes, I have not really done any major testing with these knives. So I'm giving you my initial impressions, but I do that as someone who has a lot of experience in the field with knives, with equipment, with hunting equipment, all that kind of stuff. And I can tell you, this knife included, that this knife is going to be just fine. You're going to be able to baton, cut, slice, even do a little bit of chopping, even though it's not really a chopper and it is carbon steel, so it could maybe be a little bit more brittle. This is not a chopper, but you could do a little bit of chopping with this knife. All right. So one thing about 10 carbon steel, like I do with my Mora knives, this Mora knife was the exact kind of even shinier carbon steel, and that's not rusted. That is a apple cider patina, and also blood from bloodworms when I was fishing. But don't worry about that. But I patina my carbon steel knives with apple cider vinegar because it gives it natural protection from like salt water and such. And you can see on my Mora knife here that I take this out fishing in the ocean and around surf fishing on the ocean. And by doing that apple cider patina, it really helps protect that blade, and it also really helps bring the shininess of it down. So I may do that to this one. I'm not 100% sure yet. I don't know how the 1066 will react with the apple cider vinegar versus 1095. Only time will tell. We'll see. Not sure. However, all right. So that's my initial impressions of the BPS Knives Adventurer. Really, just really nice knife. I don't like calling anything entry level because of the price. Okay, I don't. I get it. I get that when companies do budget things, they think of the entry level user. But to me, this is not an entry level knife because of the price. It's simple, and because it's simple, they keep the cost down. And because of the blade steel that they used, they don't have to charge an arm and a leg for it. But I don't consider it entry level. If you do, that's fine. All right, so ferro rod test. This ferro rod came with a significant coating on it, so you have to get that off. But once you get that off, she strikes absolutely no problem with that 90-degree spine. That's the ferro rod that it came with. That's Old Faithful, my favorite ferro rod. Strikes that no problem. And as I was saying, she's nice and sharp right out of the factory. So I love that. There's one little hitch in it. Seems like there's one little maybe tiny spot there that's got it's just a touch of a burr, but as you can see, that's right out of the box. You can shave paper, you can cut paper with it. So to me, excellent job, BPS knives. Really, just what can I say? For 40 bucks, wow, really packs one hell of a punch. And this is up there to me with the Odin Wolf for a really great budget contender. And there's things I like better about the Odin Wolf than this, and there's things I like better about this than the Odin Wolf. But we'll save that for a side by side comparison video another day and another time. All right, guys. Well, that is all I got on this one. I hope you enjoyed the review. I would not hesitate whatsoever to buy a BPS knife, the BPS Adventurer, if you feel so inclined to add to your collection. Or if it's your first knife, hey, go ahead. If you've got more money and you want to spend more money, spend more money. But if you want a nice, simple, affordable, well-made knife with a really nice, well-made, simple, rugged sheath, it's going to be hard to beat this one. So, all right, that is all I got. Don't forget the link down below for 10% off Odin Wolf knives. Use code MARSH10 as well if you would like. If you don't want to hit the affiliate link, you can use code MARSH10 on Odin Wolf website. Either way, you'll get the 10% off and you'll help out the channel. So I appreciate you so much for being here, and I will see you on the happy hunting grounds.